Imagine a man so rich, he didn't just own companies, he owned entire nations. His personal fortune funded wars, fed millions, and built an empire that lasted 1,500 years. His name wasn't Bezos, Musk, or Rockefeller. He ruled 2,000 years ago, Augustus Caesar. But here's the jaw-dropper. Historians claim he controlled 30% of the world's economy at his peak. To put that in perspective, today's richest men control fractions of a percent. How did an ancient emperor outwealth modern billionaires? And why does his grip still strangle your taxes, your salary, even the coins in your pocket? This isn't just history. This is the origin story of your money. The story of Augustus Caesar's wealth is not merely a tale of conquest and gold, but a masterclass in political manipulation and economic engineering. Born Gaius Octavius Thurinus in 63 BCE, the man who would become Augustus began his life as an unremarkable heir to a middling aristocratic family. His transformation into the unchallenged ruler of the Mediterranean world was neither inevitable nor accidental. It was a calculated ascent fueled by ambition, opportunism, and a ruthless understanding of human nature. When his great-uncle Julius Caesar was assassinated in 44 BCE, 18-year-old Octavian inherited little more than a name and a fractured political landscape. Yet within 15 years, he eradicated all rivals, from the seasoned general Mark Antony to the cunning Cicero, and reinvented himself as Augustus the Revered One. His rise was not just a triumph of arms, but of propaganda, patronage, and psychological warfare. To grasp the magnitude of Augustus's economic control, one must first confront the myth of his 30% share of the ancient world's wealth. Historians like Angus Maddison have retroactively estimated that the Roman Empire contributed roughly 30% of global GDP around 01 AD. A figure debated but widely accepted as a reflection of Rome's unparalleled scale. The empire spanned 5 million square kilometers, from the misty highlands of Scotland to the arid sands of Egypt, encompassing 60 to 70 million people, nearly a third of humanity at the time. But Augustus's dominance went beyond territory. He didn't just rule this empire, he redesigned its financial nervous system. After defeating Mark Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, he absorbed Egypt into his personal domain, bypassing the Senate entirely. Egypt was no ordinary province. Its Nile floods yielded surplus grain that fed Rome's growing population, and its vast treasuries bankrolled Augustus's ambitions. By monopolizing Egypt's grain shipments, he turned food into a weapon. When senators questioned his authority, he threatened to halt grain supplies, knowing starvation would trigger riots. When the urban poor grew restless, he distributed free bread and staged gladiatorial games, perfecting the strategy of bread and circuses that kept the masses pacified. Augustus's grip on Spain's silver mines reveals another layer of his economic genius. The Rio Tinto mines in modern-day Andalusia produced over 200 tons of silver annually, a staggering output that funded Rome's expansion. Augustus didn't just tax this wealth, he weaponized it. He melted Spanish silver into coins stamped with his profile, transforming currency into a mobile propaganda tool. Every transaction in the empire, from Syrian spice markets to Gallic cattle auctions, became a silent endorsement of his rule. These coins didn't just fund armies. They etched his image into the collective consciousness of 60 million subjects. Meanwhile, in Gaul, his tax reforms extracted 40 million sesterces annually, enough to bankroll 50 legions. He imposed inheritance taxes, sales taxes, and even a tax on the manumission of slaves, creating a revenue stream so efficient that modern tax systems still echo its structure. Yet Augustus's most insidious power lay in his ability to mask autocracy as tradition. He publicly restored the Republic, claiming to revive senatorial authority while hollowing it out from within. He refused the title of king, opting instead for princeps, first citizen, and lived in a modest house on Rome's Palatine Hill, cultivating an image of humility. Behind the scenes, he controlled every lever of power. He established the Praetorian Guard, a personal army loyal only to him, and the Aerarium Militare, a pension fund that tied soldiers' livelihoods to imperial favor, not the state. He appointed governors, controlled the courts, and manipulated elections, ensuring no rival could challenge his authority. His reign marked the birth of the Principate of veiled dictatorship draped in republican robes. The so-called Pax Romana, Roman peace, that Augustus championed was a paradox of prosperity and predation. While his reign brought stability, it was underwritten by systemic exploitation. Enslaved people constituted a third of Italy's population, many captured in his wars of expansion. Conquered regions like Judea and Dacia were drained of resources to fuel Rome's growth. When his legions needed wealth, they sacked cities with brutal efficiency. Marseille, a thriving port in modern France, was burned to the ground for defying his rule, its population slaughtered or enslaved. Augustus's tax policy squeezed provinces to the brink. Egyptian peasants toiled under backbreaking levies, while Spanish miners worked underground until their lungs collapsed. Yet this extracted wealth built the roads that connected London to Damascus, the aqueducts that quenched Rome's thirst, and the forums that became hubs of commerce. His reign was a Faustian bargain order in exchange for freedom, progress funded by suffering. Augustus's personal wealth defies modern comparison. Historian Branko Milanovic estimates his annual income at $4.6 billion in today's dollars. But this figure barely scratches the surface. Unlike modern billionaires, Augustus didn't just own assets. He owned the means of survival. He controlled Egypt's grain, Spain's silver, and Asia's trade routes, monopolizing the essentials of life. Imagine a world where Jeff Bezos owned the Mississippi River, controlled all U.S. grain production, and taxed every Amazon purchase directly into his account. That was Augustus. His fortune wasn't stored in banks, but embedded in the land, the people, and the machinery of state. When provinces rebelled, he didn't negotiate, he annihilated. His legions razed cities, enslaved populations, and salted fields, sending a clear message: resistance was economic suicide. The cultural engineering of Augustus's reign further cemented his economic control. He commissioned poets like Virgil and Horace to craft a mythos of divine destiny, portraying himself as the restorer of a golden age. Virgil's Aeneid reframed Rome's history as a preordained path to Augustus's rule, while Horace's odes celebrated the peace bought by imperial conquest. Public monuments glorified his victories, and the calendar was reworked to honor his name. Augustus gave us the month of August. This wasn't just art, it was psychological warfare, a campaign to make obedience feel like patriotism. Yet for all his ruthlessness, Augustus was a visionary bureaucrat. He conducted the first empire-wide census, creating a data network to track populations and resources. He standardized currency, weights, and measures, enabling seamless trade across continents. He established the Vigils, Rome's first firefighting force, and the Cursus Publicus, a postal system that moved goods and information at unprecedented speed. His reforms stabilized a fractured world, creating systems so resilient that traces survive in modern governance. But this stability came at a cost. By centralizing power, he snuffed out political diversity. By controlling food and money, he turned citizens into subjects. The Roman Republic, for all its flaws, had been a messy experiment in shared power. Augustus replaced it with a machine designed to serve one man. The darker chapters of his reign revealed a human toll of this machine. After his daughter Julia was caught in a scandal involving multiple affairs, Augustus exiled her to a barren island, erasing her from public memory. When his general Varus lost 3 legions in the Teutoburg forest, Augustus reportedly wandered his palace, screaming, "Varus, give me back my legions." A rare glimpse of the man beneath the myth, his paranoia grew with age. He purged potential rivals, real or imagined, and tightened censorship. By the time he died in 14 AD, Rome had traded republican chaos for imperial efficiency, but it had also surrendered its soul. Augustus's economic legacy is etched into the bones of modern life. The word coin derives from cuneus, the wedge-shaped dies used to stamp his face onto currency. The concept of a salary originates from salarium, the salt rations given to Roman soldiers. His inheritance taxes evolved into today's estate laws, and his sales taxes persist in VAT systems worldwide. The roads he built still underpin European infrastructure, and his legal codes influence centuries of jurisprudence. But his true monument is the idea that power can be centralized, systematized, and disguised as benevolence. In an age of corporate empires and digital currencies, Augustus's ghost lingers, a reminder that wealth, when fused with political power, transcends time. Augustus died in 14 AD, but his shadow stretches across centuries. The word coin comes from cuneus, the Latin term for the wedge-shaped dies that stamped his face on the currency. Your salary? It derives from salarium, the salt rations given to Roman soldiers. Even the concept of a sales tax began with his centesima rerum venalium, a 1% levy on auction goods. The systems he built centralized taxation, state-controlled food supplies. A standing army are the bones of modern governance. Was he a genius or a tyrant? The answer is both. He stabilized a broken world through brutality, creating structures we still use. But his legacy is a warning. Absolute power doesn't just corrupt, it fossilizes. The next time you pay taxes or cash a paycheck, remember, you're living in Augustus's world. You just gotta die famous. If this story of power, greed, and ancient economics shocked you, imagine what else history is hiding. Want to uncover how dead emperors still pull the strings of your bank account? Smash that subscribe button. We dig up the past to decode your present. Drop a comment below. Could a modern dictator pull off an Augustus today? Tag someone who needs to know how money really works. Turn on notifications, because history's secrets don't belong in textbooks. They belong to you. Stay curious, stay woke, and remember the past isn't done with you yet.